Connolly. I started making videos for my 5th graders and decided to make them public so everyone could learn during this crazy time. And then I decided I wanted to look at some other grade levels and see if we could help as many students as possible during this crazy time. If you have a topic you want me to cover, connollymathathome@gmail.com. Today I'm going to look at the 3rd grade standard in Massachusetts for fractions, and we are going to be thinking about fractions as equal parts of a whole. Okay, so when students leave 2nd grade, they're thinking about halves, thirds, and fourths, and they're using words to describe them. When we get to 3rd grade, that's when you start seeing fractions written as fractions. It looks very different because it feels like we're working with whole numbers, but let's take a look at what's actually going on. So let's start with a little bit of a story problem context. So 2 people are sharing 1 brownie equally. So this is the big word here. Whoopsies, does that say equally? That's good enough. So 2 people are sharing 1 brownie equally. Okay, so when we think about fractions, we are thinking about equal parts of 1 whole. 1 brownie, equal parts. Okay, so in order to show this first, you are going to give yourself a brownie. Okay, the brownie can be shown with a rectangle, and I want you thinking about how we would split this so that both people could share it equally. Okay, one way that we can do that is if we split this right down the middle. That is not perfect, okay? When we're thinking about fractions, we're thinking about perfect equal shares. So what I've done is I split it into 2 equal parts. These parts are known as halves. When we're talking about 2 equal parts of the same whole, this is 1 whole brownie, we're thinking halves, okay? So now I want to think about how much does each person get. Well, somebody's going to get this 1 piece, and somebody's going to get this 1 piece. Okay, so I want to think about how much does each person get. I'm going to shade in the part that I'm going to get. I'm going to call myself one of the people, and I'm going to shade in here. So I'm going to get 1 out of 2 equal pieces. And I'm going to show you how to write that as a fraction. Okay, each person is going to get 1 out of 2 equal pieces. And the way that we say this out loud is 1 half. Since these pieces are called halves, and you learned that in 2nd grade, 1 out of 2 equal pieces, each person gets 1 half. Okay? Special words that you need to know that I'll leave up here in pink is we have our numerator. That is the number on top, and then the bottom number is called our denominator. The denominator represents the total number of equal pieces that we're dealing with. We're dealing with 2 total equal pieces, 2 halves, and each person is getting 1 out of those 2 pieces, so 1 half. So numerator represents right now the portion that's shaded in, or the portion that each person gets, 1 out of 2 equal pieces. Okay, so those are some special words, numerator and denominator. Halves are what we're talking about when there's 2 equal pieces. Okay, so let's say we're dealing with brownies again, but this time we have 3 people sharing 1 brownie. Okay, so let's think about that again. We have 1 brownie, and I need to share it equally between 3 people. So we can't do halves this time because there would only be 2 equal pieces, and we need to share it with 3 people. So I think you might be predicting right now that I need to cut it into 3 pieces. but I want to show you something that might be a mistake that kids think about. No, we don't need that piece over there. So when we think about thirds, we need to think about making, first of all, only 3 equal pieces. Okay, you'll notice I drew 3 lines, and I ended up with this 4th big chunk at the end. Okay, when we are thinking about making thirds or halves or fourths or sixths or eighths, which I believe you need to know here in 3rd grade, they have to be equal pieces of the whole. Okay, so equal pieces of the entire thing. So you can't just draw 3 lines because you're going to end up with 4 pieces. It's a common mistake. It happens all the time. So when you're done with your cutting it into thirds, you've got to double check and count how many pieces you made. You also want to make sure that they are the same size. Let me show you another way we can split into thirds so we don't think that there's only one way to do it. Okay? So I noticed that my middle chunk's a little large. Okay, so it takes a little practice cutting into equal pieces. You can be my age and still need some help. So anyways, when we think about splitting between 3 people, we end up with pieces called thirds. How many thirds did we make? 1, 2, 3. We made 3 thirds. But I want to think about how much does each person get. So if there's 3 people, they're each going to get 1 piece of this, right? So watch me shade in how much each person gets. Each person will get 1/3. And how do I write that? Well, I know my denominator represents the total number of pieces, and I know my numerator represents how much I'm taking out of those total pieces. And how do we read this? 1/3. 1 out of 3 pieces that are equal is how much each person gets. 1/3. Okay? So I know it's funky to look at. It feels like, why are these whole numbers said so funny? It looks different. 1 out of 3 equal pieces, 1/3. Okay, so do you see the 3 equal pieces that represent the denominator? I shaded in 1. 1 out of 3 pieces is how much each person is going to get. Okay? All right, so we've covered halves, we've covered thirds. Let's think about now if we have a brownie and we want to split them. This one brownie is going to get split equally between 4 people. What might we call those pieces? Anyone raising their hand out there? We're going to call it fourths. Okay, so again, once we it's called partition. Once we partition this whole into 4 equal pieces, we're going to double check that we made fourths, and we're going to triple, quadruple check that they're the same exact size. Okay, so when you are making fourths, one way to do it would be to cut down the middle. You see halves. Then cut it again. Some of us might get our, draw straight lines, friends. Don't be like me. All right, so let's make sure we made 4 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's take a peek. Do they look about equal, the best that we can do drawing on our own? Yes. But you want to make sure you showed fourths. You want to make sure there's 4 of them. You want to make sure that they're the same size. Okay? And so we know when we make our denominator, we're going to end up with fourths. So 4 is how many equal pieces we have. And how much would each person get? Each person would get 1/4. Okay, so if we split it between 4 people, we'd split it into fourths, and then Miss Connolly is one of the people. She takes her 1/4, 1 out of 4 equal pieces. Okay, there are 2 more denominators that I want to introduce to you as 3rd graders, and I want you to make predictions about what we're going to call them as I'm doing this. So you're not just sitting at home watching the video, Miss Connolly teach, you are thinking at the same time. So, I have a brownie. Brand new information for you 3rd graders. Fourths, thirds, and halves are covered in 2nd grade. I have 1 brownie. I want to split it equally between 6 people. I'll say that again. I have 1 brownie that I want to split equally between 6 people. What do you think we might call those pieces? Pause me if you want to think about it a second longer. We're going to call those pieces 6. And just like all of the other ones that we've done, they need to be the same size pieces. We cannot start drawing 6 like this and end up with that big large piece at the end, okay? So it takes a little while to get used to drawing 6. I'll show you a couple ways to think about it. First, I can cut in half. Then I think about making each half into 3 equal pieces because I know 3 plus 3 is 6. Then I'm going to double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I made sure I had 6 pieces. I made them as equal as I possibly could. How much of the brownie does each person get? I know my denominator is going to be 6. I know that we're calling these pieces sixths. So if I take 1 piece out of 6, that fraction is written as 1 out of 6, or we might say it out loud, 1/6. Okay? 1 out of 6 equal pieces. The whole thing, 1 out of 6 is 1/6. Okay? Just so you know, just like 2 halves made 1 whole, 3/3 made a whole, 4/4 made a whole, 6/6 makes the whole thing. Okay, so it's something that we should be thinking about as we start moving forward with fractions. All right, one more denominator that you need to know in 3rd grade is I have 1 brownie. 1 brownie. And I need to split it equally between 8 people. 8 people. I'm just feeling sad because my pieces are getting smaller because there's more people to share with. So, something else to think about. Are the pieces getting smaller? Very interesting. We'll be covering that. When you're dealing with 8 equal pieces, we're calling that eighths. Okay? So, let's think about how we could represent eighths. I'm going to think about fourths because there's a relationship. Oh, and halves, look at this. Miss Conley made a mistake, so hold on 1 second. Let me do it a different way. So halves, fourths, and eighths. Okay, and now I'm going to double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I made 8 equal pieces. Just want to double check. I guess I made them a little different sizes, so we kind of want to make an effort to get as close to possible as making all equal pieces. So let me double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Anyone out there have a prediction what my denominator is going to be? How many equal pieces I have total? 8. And how much, how much does each person get? Each person receives 1/8. That's how we're going to say it. 1/8 of the brownie. Okay, so friend 1 gets 1/8. Friend 2 is going to get that piece. Friend 3, friend 4, friend 5, friend 6, friend 7, friend 8. They're all getting 1/8 of the brownie. And how many eighths does it take to make a whole brownie? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So, what did we learn in review today? We were thinking about fractions being equal parts of 1 whole. Okay, so every single time that I was drawing these representations, I drew 1 brownie and I split it into the correct number of pieces. All right? When we got the number of pieces that we were thinking about, for example here, we needed 8 equal pieces because we're sharing with 8 people. We use that number as our denominator. Then, when we're thinking about how much each person gets, for example, that's our numerator. So then we read this as 1/8. Very important things that we did when we were making our representation. We double checked the number of parts. Okay, if we're talking about halves, it's 2. If we're talking about thirds, it's 3. If we're talking about fourths, it's fourths. If we're talking about 6, it's sixths. And if we're talking about eighths, it's 8 equal pieces. Okay? Big word that's important, equal. They have to be the same size when we're talking about fractions. Fractions are equal parts of a whole. That's officially the definition that you're going to be working with for the rest of your math career. Okay, so make sure when you're doing your representations today on what we call the area model, but you're going to call it a brownie, that all your pieces are the same size. Make sure you double check how many pieces that you made to make sure you made the correct amount, and then think about your denominator, what it's going to be there. Okay, make sure you watch the next video about representing fractions on a number line too, because that's another way we think about it. Okay.